Welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is on Beyond the Hype, Building a Resilient AIOps Framework. And joining me today is Amol Rastogi, our Principal Product Manager. And then we also have Swayam Prakash Dash, our Principal Solutions Engineer. They will do their formal introduction shortly, but before we get started, just a reminder, we do have the Q&A in Zoom. So if you do have any questions during this presentation, please put your questions in there. When they are alternatively not speaking, they will try to answer those. And at the end, we will unmute you to have an opportunity to speak to us live. Until that time, you will remain muted, just so we can, for the purpose of recording, make sure that we've got everything for you to share post-event. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Amol to get us started, and we will speak to you towards the end. So over to you, Amol.
Oh, thanks, Samantha. This is the second follow-up session that we are doing today with this specific audience, and welcome everyone for this building, beyond the AIOps resilience use cases, right? So my name is Anmol Rastogi, and I'm Principal Product Manager with BMC for almost now 3 years. So I will be discussing about some of the analogy that we have built for car related things and how this analogy basically translate, to the AIOps use cases. So Sam, you would like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for giving us the time today. My name is Swayam Dash, and I'm part of the pre-sales team, the solution engineering team in BMC. I've been with BMC for more than 3 years right now, and I primarily deal with customers in the India region. Thank you.
All right. So what we are going to cover is little bit around the car analogy, which is basically going to talk about what is the complexity and how the coverage does matter. Because to be honest, I always start this famous with the famous quote, right, which I use in my other webinars also. AIOps does not just give you more alerts. It's manage the complexity, by converting data noise into an actionable insight. And with that, let's just, kick off this webinar. So if you will go to the next slide, this talks about today's agenda. But yeah, I mean, let's move on to the car analogy that I'm going to talk about. Now, just think about, what it takes for a modern car to function reliably. It not just nowadays it chases and an engine anymore. It's a mobile interconnected computer system. We trust this interconnected system with our lives. We drive these cars and we trust that everything will works and we are safely going to reach to our destination, right? And IT trust its systems basically with the visuals. The trust come from the complete coverage of its functional requirement. Now, just take an example, again from the car perspective, in a traditional car service model, you only check the brake when the brake warning lights, basically a traditional alert comes on. Now, consider two scenarios here where we have in scenario one full coverage. If every component like pads, fluid, F sensor is monitored, if failing sensor is caught before the brake fails, right? It's basically saves your life. In scenario two, where you have an insufficient coverage, where you only monitor the brake fluid level, you have a blind spot here, right? You the sensor basically on the app system could fail, right? Or a slow data leak in the brake by buyer system could also occur, and you would have no alert until the total system fail. And that's basically, the kind of thing that I'm talking about, that we trust interconnected components based on our life. And similarly, the failure can occur because of these blind spots into the IT environment as well. And these can cause uh, major problems or major loss into the revenue. So moving on to the next slide. We have seen, the IT environments grows from simple website to vast landscape for of multi-cloud, microservices, and massive data volume. Now, in this kind of, vast expansion into the IT environment, traditional monitoring tools just can't keep up. I mean, they can still give you the valuable insight, but the valuable insight will come basically like, hey, you have a network problem, and you don't know basically because of this network problem what could be the potential issues in your business, right? Or is this a completely a network failure, or it's basically it could be a slow database query, right? So you get the events, you get the noise basically, but what's going to happen in this vast landscape? You are going to basically you will try to find out, a needle into the haystack, right? So it's very difficult. And in IT, AIOps requires complete end-to-end data coverage. And that's what the point here is, that it's just not only the logs, the metrics also needs to be covered, and the traces also need to be covered across your entire infrastructure from cloud to even edge also, right? Now, without it, the blind spots are where the next massive outage will hide, as I was speaking in my previous slide as well. In IT, one minor failure, like a slow database query, can trigger a chain reaction known as a cascading failure that takes down an entire services. And that's where, we will be giving you some demonstration in the form of slide. Uh, or case study, the real case studies, that how this blind spot can easily be spotted and fixed it, and can be fixed. That will be covered by Swam. Now, moving on to the next slide, just think about, without AIOps, right? The human dispatcher basically, right? It it doesn't different alerts, fire. Uh, an IT team member has to manually, shift through those thousands of logs to figure out that the root cause that the root cause was the first problems or not, right? The slow database. It take hours. The business is down. And with AIOps, which is basically is the self-driving IT system, I will say, nowadays in the car terminology, AIOps is basically constantly processing the full coverage data. All just to correlate this, like all the ADAS sensors and the diagnostics in the real time. It automatically correlate, your hundreds of thousands of different alerts into one single major incident story, right? That's basically in BMC Helix AIOps, what we call it a situation. And then it uses the machine learning to run the root cause analysis, which is RCA, identifying the slow database queries as the single initiating factor. When I say single initiating factor, I mean the database query is slow. Because of that, the response time started to slow. Your CPU spike happened, the memory spike happened, and then all of a sudden, you see, because of this, your network basically bandwidth slows down. But the root cause was actually the database, right? So that's how AIOps basically helps to speed up the work, and it predicts the pileup before it happens, right? Or rapidly automate the remediation based on the RCA, right? So that's where AI ops help. And especially our GPT capabilities, which also, enhance our existing AIOps capabilities by providing the best action recommendation, or, even if you correlate like probably thousands of events into one single situation where you see some cryptic languages to read, it basically gives you a readable format output where you can actually read what's happened, and then you can actually, translate that into a proper, actionable action. So that's how, our Gen AI capabilities helps you. Now, from this slide, I would also like to call out, few takeaways. Now, with BMC Helix AI Ops capabilities, while we, work with the customer, we literally have seen that, I mean, it's not just day one or day two job. It's take basically some time for you to achieve this kind of metrics. If you are trying to achieve that, if you wanted to create a service model using our existing blueprint patented technologies, that it takes less than 10 minutes, for customers. Once they establish all the processes, it takes for them to create this new service model within less than 10 minutes. And 90% of their event noise reduction happen without with full coverage. With full coverage, I mean to say that they started to ingest logs, they started to, ingest metrics from all of their environment, all of their infra, and then basically it helps them to, reduce the mean time to repair for a particular problem by almost like 60 minutes, right? More than 60 minutes. And because we do have a connection with the ITSM story, which is our service ops story, it actually reduces the event noise. Now, instead of cutting like probably thousands of incidents from each event, our system helps them to basically create only one incident with all the related information where action can be taken, and helps to reduce the mean time to repair. So moving on to the next slide. Now, we were discussing about the AIOps outcome, right? And to achieve this outcome, definitely, there are components required. I usually call it out, in the AIOps word is the foundation. The foundation, if your foundation is strong, right? And when I say foundation, what I mean to say here is that the data ingestion, right? The data ingestion that is happening in the foundation layer of the AIOps, if that data ingestion is not having enough coverage or not having, enough breadth or depth, then you will still have the blind spot that I was talking about, right? In two of the scenarios that I was talking about, that if you are only, doing monitoring for break, but not, the fluid level or, the apps sensors, then your brake system will still show fail, may not show the proper failure, right? So just to correlate it here, if the data ingestion is not happening, your events are coming, or the metrics probably you are covering, let's say only CPU metrics, but you're not covering the memory metrics. So that means there is a problem. You still have the blind spot. You may see the problem with the CPU, but actually the problem may happen because of your memory consumption, right? So these things, the solid foundation layer has to be established in order to basically, do the proper correlation. And once the correlation happens, it becomes easy for machine learning algorithm to identify the causal event. And once the causal event basically identified with all the data correlation in place, then Helix GPT capabilities with the human in loop, right, helps to uh, helps to summarize the problem in a more readable way, and also helps to provide more better user experience to our customers, in order to take the action that was actually executed in past on the similar kind of situations. That's basically, you can actually execute this automated remediation action using the existing GPT capabilities. So that's the power of AI. But again, I would also like to emphasize once again, the power of AI can also be seen once you have the strong foundation layer set through the breadth and depth of coverage. With this, actually, I will hand it over to Sam to walk us through with the customer use cases and scenarios that we work.
Thank you, Anmol. That was really insightful. So, um, I will start with what we did with the customer to find out, what was really happening. So many a times we hear customers saying that, I'm not able to get enough out of the tool, and the tool is really capable. Your demos are really insightful. They look really good. But I'm not able to do any of that, right? I'm not sure of my coverage. I'm not sure where to get this context. I'm not sure what is my depth. So here's one of the case studies that we did. We spoke to the customer. Of course, it took a little bit of time because we had to speak to different personalities. We had to speak to the admins. We had to speak to the users. Just to understand what is happening, right? This customer, obviously, they were a few years into the ecosystem as well, which means the platform had settled. And what we heard is some of these things that I was telling you, right? That some of the basics were actually missing. from the whole foundation. And going back to the car example again, if you don't have a system which sends signals when, let's say, the brake pads wear out, and you have a system in place which tells you about the brake fluid, what's going to happen is you will have a functional brake system which is not going to be able to stop you when the time matters, and that will cause catastrophic results. So when looking at an IT system as well, we need to look at it holistically, not just from a perspective of, okay, I'm monitoring the OS, I'm looking at the processes, but what about the user side of it? Isn't that important? Maybe everything is fine on the infrastructure level, but the user itself is not able to access. And of course, there are a lot of tools that can be used by the customer. It's not just BMC Helix, right? They might be having some open source tools, some APM tools, network tool might be with somebody else. And it's really important to get all of this data together to analyze what benefits we are going to get. But even before all that, right, some of the basic questions: am I having enough coverage? Am I having enough depth? What sort of signals are being sent into my AI layer so that it can tell me about those outcomes that I'm expecting? That's important. And what we found out when we did this exercise is the overall coverage that the customer was having was sitting at approximately 55%. Right? So there just wasn't enough coverage for the system to determine when a failure occurs. Right? So multitude of systems available. There isn't a proper place around making sure that whenever a new CI is spun up, that is actually added into that tool. And they were using multitude of tools. So it's not that everything was on BMC Helix. There were some open source tools. There was a different tool for network. But again, coming back to the overall question, this is not a tool specific problem, right? There was a problem with the process that the customer was having, which means all the layer above it, right? And when you look at it from an AIOps perspective, there isn't just enough signal coming through for the system to be able to tell you that, hey, you are having a problem in this area, right? And this is a basic issue. Building that foundation where the system has enough insights to tell you that a failure has occurred or a failure is going to occur, right? And this is, and if we see network is at 48%, operating system has 44, hardware 45, not really something, to be proud of. The storage team was doing a little better. This is not the overall coverage. There were a few other aspects that we looked at as well. But it wasn't painting a really rosy picture. And if this happens, no matter the tool you use, no matter the AI you use, it's just not going to be able to give you what you're looking for, because it doesn't know. And this is a blind spot that you're having with respect to coverage. And we also took that opportunity to look at their depth. And again, similar kind of picture there, not very deep in terms of monitoring the right amount of parameters, using about, of course, they had more technologies, which is not listed here, but none of these were being monitored. And if you look at the right-hand side of it, very, very thinly spread on the application layer, not using enough parameters. Sometimes, customers do ask these questions that how many parameters are really enough to make sure that I'm doing the sufficient amount of monitoring. And the way we like to answer that is, tools are only helping you achieve that outcome that you want to achieve, right? Ultimately, you have a goal in mind, and the tool is only a facilitator, a means to get to that outcome. So what you need to really ask yourself is, what is it that I need to determine that I am in a healthy state or not? Those signals, we call it golden signals, that is what needs to be monitored. That's the right amount of monitoring that you need to place. That once you have that monitoring in place, you don't have to look at it manually. You don't have to do those steps manually. If there's a failure that occurs in any of those parameters, that parameter should tell you that the system is now in an unhealthy state. That's the right amount of monitoring. So there's no point of having 7 parameters or 10 parameters or 20 parameters, right? But it is an indication of, definitely an indirect indication of how deep you are, in terms of what are you monitoring. So If you're really doing only one parameter, let's say in anything in one of the technologies, then that probably means you simply don't have the depth, right? So it's an indicator, but it's not just that, okay, let me go ahead and enable all the parameters and that will give me all the all the insights that I want. So a really important thing to remember here: work on the outcome. The tools are only the a means to get to that outcome. So the outcome is the key. And basis this, we actually went ahead and identified the gaps. We tried to categorize it, giving the customer a bunch of next steps that they could do. And if you see here, some of these might look very low-key items which should have been done. So a few years into the project, and automatic incident generation and be that as may, was still not happening. They were manually handing off incidents, working on emails, and that was causing a major gap. There's a gap between when the system detects and when somebody actually gets to it. And you have absolutely no idea so as to whether they actually got to it or not, right? Because the way to look at it is, if you have an event in a system, that should be creating an incident for you. Otherwise, there's no point of having that alert. Again, going back to the car analogy, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the hood. But when there is a light on the dashboard, which indicates a malfunction, which indicates an issue, low fuel, tire pressure, or a brake failure, it expects you to action it, right? The car will indicate to you, and it will be an actionable insight. It's, the indicator is just not there, for the sake of it, right? Which means the next thing it expects is you're going to do something about it. You take it maybe to service, or you maybe fill it up with fuel or air, or depending on what happens. And the same thing goes for alerting as well. Select the alerts that actually give you those insights. Select the parameters that give you those insights. And that's the amount of monitoring that you need to have. So some of this might look really low key, but amongst all that clutter, the basics were actually lost. And basis this, we gave them a few recommendations. So what we categorize this as, after discussing with them, is there is absolutely something which you need to do right now. This can't wait at all. And that is to improve coverage to up to 100%. Of course, that's really a golden state, really difficult to get there, but it should be nearer to that number. The farther north of 90s, the better. And obviously the depth as well, right? Relook at what you're monitoring, whether you're covering everything. One of the key things we saw is the admin team that is managing the tool and the technology owners. There's some sort of disconnect that they were having between each other, right? So the technology owners were not really involved in the process of deciding which parameters that needs to be monitored. That was something which also needed to be addressed. Of course, a process problem, nothing to do with the tool itself, but that will ensure that all alerts that are configured are actually actionable, because that will create an incident that will tie them to an SLA, that will tie them to some actionable insight that they need to do. And then we looked at, in a few weeks, that what is it that you could target in a few weeks after you get the now, in a few weeks or maybe a few months, what is it that you could target, which is, adoption of new features, deploying redundancies, addressing personas. And last step would be the actual AIOps adoption phase, where your basics are ready, your fundamentals are ready, your process is in place, your people are in place. You have what you need for the system to give you those insights. And that would be the last part, which is dynamic service modeling, having automatic event correlation. Of course, you could do automatic event correlation earlier as well. But then again, if you don't have enough data and signals coming in, or enough events coming in, enough metrics coming in, there'll be a blind spot there, and it will not give you, you'll not be able to trust it. You'll always be doubting yourself that, is it actually telling me what I need to know? That system doesn't have that extra data, right? So that's why really important to make sure that the left-hand side and the middle, which is the few weeks and now, is done really well. And once this recommendation was made, now obviously the adoption phase comes in. This is not going to be easy. It's not a one day or a one-nighter that a person can pull. It's like hitting the gym, right? You have to do it continuously. You have to keep repeating it in a regular fashion, and only that will give you those outcomes. And when we did this, and recently we did a check again, and there is a massive difference in the sort of coverage that they were having because all these basics were fulfilled. So the outcome of this activity was that we got to connect with the customer, the stakeholders were able to connect to each other as well, more like a service op story. So those silos were actually broken down, which was within that organization. And what we have seen is there's a massive difference in the coverage. Of course, the customer wants to be at 100%, but we know that the last few percentages are really, really difficult due to various reasons, incompatibilities, firewall, DMZ, and whatnot, right? Could also be that there's a separate monitoring tool running there, or that it's on a legacy platform which can't be integrated. So yeah, they're trying their level best to get to that the northerly 99s or the northerly 90s. But yeah, this is what they're at. One of the important things to note here is that the customer also identified that there are 8% orphaned assets. Nobody knows that those assets existed. They were just lying there. Maybe, test servers, or somebody spun up a server for some project and they were just lying there, unused. So 8% are the orphaned assets. So the way I look at this data is, if you look at the current coverage and the amount of orphaned assets that the customer has, that's about a direct fit, right? So the way I look at this data is that they really didn't know how many assets or CIs they had. So really important to get this piece right, because this will lead to that outcome. And again, we looked at their monitoring depth as well. One of the things you will notice here is there were 20 different sessions that the customer conducted internally with the different verticals to get their requirements and their confirmation. And that is what helped in getting this adoption up, right? Real collaboration between those teams. And you will see that, the tool is only an enabler here. It's not really doing anything. The only thing that, is being done is the customer needed some direction. That direction was provided. Once that direction is provided, they, have gone about and followed those recommendations, having those sessions internally. And now they are monitoring about 539 parameters. That is more than double the number of metrics that they were doing previously, right? So this is really good, because now when you build a model on top of it, when you have, let's say, Gen AI enabled, it will have those additional metrics, giving it that insight, those additional events coming in, telling the system that, these things are going wrong, this baseline is being violated, this behavior has changed. So this is really, really key that depth was also addressed as part of the coverage. And with that, what has happened today is the customer has a better system in place. They are able to find and fix root cause faster. There is better visibility amongst, they are using blueprints. They have spun up a few models. They are able to get those insights, because again, one of the key things there is, when the other technology staff was made a part of this process, they also felt involved, which means they are also utilizing the tool now, and it's not just the admins and the monitoring team per se. And they have also started exploring predictions that can the system tell me before the service actually fails. And for some of the mundane tasks, automations have also been put into place. Now that the insights are there, they have also started leveraging some of those insights to get key results, get that MTTR down, remove that that mundane task which I need to keep dying. If one of the things that they have done, what they told us is, if there is no CR which is available for CI, and let's say a process goes down or a disk goes full, then a remedial action will actually trigger for those basic items which earlier used to take maybe multiple minutes and hours, right? So they have gone from a reactive to a more proactive system. Coverage has increased, depth has increased. So now there is a better chance for AI to give results vis-a-vis what was there earlier. And with that, I would like to hand it back to Anmol. Anmol, you want to take the concluding slides?
Absolutely. I mean, what a wonderful, insight that you have given on some of the customer case studies that we have executed with the customer, right? So thanks, Sam, for that. And with that, actually, I will again bring up my car analogy. Sorry to bother you about this car analogy again and again. To conclude this session, the requirement, if you will look at from the car function perspective, is basically it demands complete monitoring coverage to ensure safety. And to correlate this with the current IT ecosystem, which involves a lot of complexity, is basically the complexity of a modern IT stack demands the same, right? The complete coverage. AIOps is your just, intelligent service manager for the world's most complex machine, which is your IT environment. Now, the key takeaway for you today is simple. Prioritize the coverage. Ensure that your AIOps platform is ingesting all your data, metrics, logs, and traces, both in terms of depth and breadth, to eliminate the blind spot. You should not have the blind spots in the foundation layer. If you have the blind spots in the foundation layer, that means the AIOps can produce the result, but not in the way that where you wanted to reduce your mean time to repair, and you wanted to basically, find out the root cause analysis in more better way. And to embrace the complexity, use AI ops ML capabilities to move beyond, simple alert-based monitoring and into proactive anomaly detection and automated root cause analysis. So these two key takeaways that, I would like to basically, emphasize, and you should also take it, prioritize coverage, embrace complexity using AI ops ML capabilities. So with this, let's move on to the next slide. Now, the call to action here is basically very simple. Uh, as a next step, in case if you wanted to work with us, just connect with your customer success managers or account manager probably, to get the details on assessing the environment, and ask probably, for a workshop that if you wanted to conduct with us. Or the better way is basically, to reach out, to BMC support also, in case if you wanted to know that how we executed this kind of things with our previous customer session. We can also help you there. And to have more specific information that, what are our breadth and depth of coverages, we constantly increasing our breadth and depth of coverages in terms of, BMC native technologies, or wherever we see, our partner ecosystem exists. We also do the partners basically, we ask the partners also to develop, out of the box capabilities to cover with the uh, solution that can remove the blind spots, right? So please, connect with PM teams for a broader roadmap session about how we are improvising the data collection, especially in nowadays, in the words of like synthetic monitoring, in words of now, cloud monitoring, in words of like, the latest or the modern technologies like Kubernetes, OpenShift, and all sorts of things, right? We also have even edge computing monitoring as well, right? So we do have all of this breadth and depth coverage. We also have hotel coverage, by the way. So we do have all this components in place. Please connect with us. We also recommend you to go through our BMC official documentation, because that should also be your place to look into the information. But I understand that if you cannot go through those thousands of pages, then I also recommend basically to attend our periodic webinars for more additional information and more to get more contextual information, rather than, reading those thousands of pages of documentation. So with this, actually, I would like to, conclude on today's slide. So if you will move on to the next slide. From there, actually, Samantha will pitch in.
Yeah,
Samantha?
thank you.
Yeah.
So, just mentioning on past webinars, and actually just talking to the team before we started, we did actually have two recent webinars which were about AI ops and the value. I will share those links, and I haven't put them on here, but they were run as part one and part two. Some of you may have joined those sessions, but they really help you with getting value and where to move next. And it also gives you extra support outside of the team today. But additionally, as you can see, we've got a lot of past webinars that we feel will be highly useful. Obviously not expecting you to write them all down now. For those that are quite familiar with my community page, you will see a lot of past webinar content on there. I will point you to that link in the thank you email so you get all of this together. So really good sessions. We're really open to hear about what else that you think might be of interest. So whilst we're curating the content, it's good to get your direct feedback. So if you do have 5 minutes as well, I'm hoping to send everything out tomorrow. Please put your details in or let us know what else you'd like to see, because again, we need to make sure that you get on your journey correctly. Next slide is also just a little bit about getting started. So if you're still very new to AIOps or you're sitting on older versions like TSOM, BHOM, and looking to move into Gen AI stuff, this is a really good starting point. I use this with a lot of our AIOps webinars. Again, I would reach out and say, go and have a look at this content. It will be really useful. And then the next one will be our roadshows. So some of you may know or already signed up or even attended. So we've got almost halfway through. Riyadh is the next one that's coming up on October the 29th. And then I can recognize quite a few familiar names that are based in the US. We'd love to see some of you at New York. Whilst it won't be this local team, there will be a team that's already out in America that will attend those sessions as well. And then finally, we conclude all of the road shows on November the 25th. And then the next slide is Gartner. So I'm always asking if we've got feedback that directly goes to Gartner, and if it's published, the insights, you will be eligible for gift cards. But again, it's just feedback on the BMC Helix technology that you're using. And if you do have a chance, we'd love you to fill that in as well. And with that, it moves very nicely on to the Q&A. We have had a very shy audience today, guys. No questions at the moment, but why I start unmuting and giving people the opportunity to speak, and we've done it in record time. You were quicker than this morning. We can finish earlier if there isn't any questions, but we'd love to give you the opportunity to ask anything. And maybe Swam and Amal, I don't mind who goes first, but just a little bit of a CTA and just a recap would be great while I start unmuting everyone.
Okay, so I think final words from my end would be, the basics are the same. Of course, AI is helping us. We have all seen what ChatGPT can do, Gemini and the likes, right? And it's improving day by day. But we all remember when ChatGPT came out, initially they had limited data and they were only able to answer questions to a certain extent. So going by that analogy, my request to all of you would be that whilst the system can give us great insights, we need to make sure that the basics are right. And this is a periodic process that we need to keep doing, right? And that's part of the hygiene, and that will ensure that the system can deliver those insights to you and give you those that data, those metrics, which will really help bring down the RCA.
I think you cover pretty much all things. Again, going back to the car analogy, I mean, if your coverage is solid, then you basically have right information in place to save your life, right? So same thing applies in the IT terminology as well. If you have right coverage in place, both in breadth and depth perspective, then the AI ops can help you to ensure that your services are always running and giving the better experience to users.
I don't know, Swam and Amal, obviously we got a couple of questions this morning. I don't know if you want to reframe those or anything that you want to share, because I will be sharing those out. Was there anything that you felt was useful?
Yeah, one thing that again I would like to check, and the morning also I had checked this time, right? If you wanted to give some pointers or basically hint to our customers that how they should basically start to get this right coverage in place, both in breadth and depth perspective, so that will be great. So maybe if you can just throw some light on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, going by what we have done with a few of our customers is, start with the basics, and don't be shy, don't be a stranger. Make sure that people who are responsible for that particular technology are made a part of the decision-making process. Keep it transparent, right? So let's say if I want to find out, let's say I have WebSphere, what parameters are being monitored on WebSphere. This should be available publicly within the organization, right? A person let's say if I belong to the WebSphere team and I'm managing that application, I shouldn't have to go log a request or dig down five consoles and then ask someone, send an email to understand what is it that is happening. Because ultimately it's my responsibility, right? The tool is giving me insights to make sure that the application is working well. So I would say, keep it simple, make it interactive, keep everybody as a part of the decision-making process, make it transparent, so that everybody has access to that information. Everybody knows what is being monitored, what alerts are coming in, what SLAs are in place, right? So these things are available freely to access, and I believe that's the right way to do it.
Thank you. Really good advice. Okay, we have a question. Actually, Shad's asked one. How does root cause isolation RCI work? Great question.
Anmol, you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. So just think about, the root cause isolation. Before even we talk about the root cause isolation, the things that needs to be in place, right? Let's cover that little bit. Uh, so let's say, you have some business services, right? And that business services has some dependencies basically on the infrastructure component or basically on the network component or basically have some dependencies on the application related component, right? So basically you define a service model, and to build this service model, probably you will use the discovery to scan the environment, and you build the service model, and then probably you started to ingest data, and you set the context. Once you set the context, if any of the component that's basically defined as an kind of like failure, or which has dependencies on many other application or basically components, and if any of those components fails, basically there the system will look at the sequence of events, right? Sequence of events happening within the same service context, and within the same service context, what it try to identify that what was the first failure that occurred, right? And that causes basically, the chain of event to be happened, right? So with that, actually, it's try to identify the root cause isolation that, okay, this is the first event that happened into the service context. And that will be the most probably, the higher probability that this will be the root cause of the other events that happen in the same service context. So that's how, the RCA works.
It was a very detailed answer. I'm sure it was. Okay. I can see he's come off mute, but he may have joined via the browser, which doesn't always give you audio, and I can't see anything moving. Shad, if you have joined via the browser, you may not be able to speak to us, unfortunately. But if you do have any further questions on it, let us know. We can answer those, but hopefully that's answered your question. Okay. I'm going to assume there isn't any further questions. I think they've made it too easy for you both. I like lots of challenging questions. Just to recap, and I would like to just invite everyone, I do have a webinar coming up on the 22nd of October with Amol's colleague, Euron, and it's going to be with a customer directly, CGI, and they're going to be talking about empowering people driving business value with AIOps. We would love to see some of you there. I will share the link in the thank you email, and it will be a personal story, and they'll talk about the complexity of IT, how to leverage AIOps to support the teams. They'll talk about business value. So again, kind of what we've been talking about today, and also how to go from reactive to proactive. So we'd love to see some of you there. And more importantly, if anyone is brave enough, if you've got a story in yourself, in your company that you'd like to share, again, please reach out on the survey that will come out, because the more we share together, the more we grow.